And for George, I know you don't directly are involved with the goings on with the show right now, but I just wanted to get your opinion on exactly how the show has deviated from your own writings and how well you think that should continue or not continue.
I always think of Tyrion's Nose when someone asks that question.
So predictable.
Tyrion's Nose is a good example. I mean, yeah, they didn't cut off his nose. I can write that, you know, yes, and they cut off his nose, and then I can make references in the subsequent books to him having half a nose or having a big scar and to how it itches and he scratches it. That's relatively easy for me to do. Actually, cutting off Peter Dinklage's nose was prohibited by the Actors Guild. So we were stuck with, well, if we wanted to do that, we would have to essentially put a piece of green screen, a little green kind of thing on the end of his nose that he would have to wear in all of his scenes, and then we could CGI every moment he appeared, you know, the nose scar, and that was just way too expensive. Yes. I mean, it's the practicalities of doing it again. You know, a lot of the changes that occur between a movie or a television show or book are dictated by practical considerations like that, questions of budget and shooting time and what can be done and what can't be done. And I'm already forgetting the other question. I'm sorry, my mind is a sieve here.
Whenever you, if you do hit bumps in the road or roadblocks with character plots or like traits or whatever, how much of that do you draw from your personal life in order to create a more in-depth character or scene or relationship?
Okay, yours is?
A Song of Ice and Fire is a very, very long, well, it's a fairly long-running series of very long novels, and people who read these, who have been reading these novels since the beginning have developed a kind of a feeling, I feel they must have developed a feeling of trust that you're going to be leading them to somewhere that ultimately has a very good payoff. Do you feel that with the immense number of people you kill per book, that you could violate that trust?
Immense. So those go together, you know, in terms of your personal experiences and then also the personal feelings of the readers. So.
Well, I hope I don't violate that trust, but you know, I've kind of become accustomed to the fact that some people probably will think I have by the time we reach the end. You know, it's a phenomenon of a long-running series like this when, you know, people start noticing it with the first book or the second book or the third book, and then they love those books, and the fourth book's not out yet, and they start anticipating the fourth book, and this platonic ideal of what that fourth book is going to be develops in their head, and then they get the actual fourth book, and many people are happy with it, but then there's always going to be a percentage of readers who are not happy with it because it didn't go the way they thought it was going to go, or it wasn't as whatever it was they thought it was. So you inevitably come on that with the series, but I certainly want to try to stick the ending as best I can. It's not easy. I mean, I'm not going to name names here, but over dinner we were discussing some other writers, and you know, some very, very good writers have a real problem with endings. Endings can be tough, especially for big, sprawling things. You pull out a lot of stuff. As for the question about yes, you do draw on your personal experience to make characters come alive, to some extent. That's where the inner life comes from. That's where the human heart and conflict with self comes from. I was very threatened as a kid when I knew I wanted to be a writer by the stuff you always read in like how to write books and things like only write about what you know. Because I wanted to write science fiction and fantasy, and I didn't really know about being a prince or an astronaut, or I was this kid from New Jersey, and we were poor. We didn't even own a car. My world was 5 blocks long, and I'm saying, oh God, do I have to write about a guy who lives in Bayonne in the projects and walks to school every day, 5 blocks long? But what I discovered is that what you know, it's not the mundane details of where you live and what it is, but it's what you know is about life, about love, heroism and cowardice and these issues, what it's like to be human, and you have to draw on yourself to do that. Yeah, you draw on other things too. You read, characters from history, and you read people in the news, and you have friends and relatives and guys you went to school with, and girls you went to school with, and you can base characters on all of them to some extent, at least externally. But you only know those people unless you're a telepath, and you don't look like a telepath to me. You don't really know what's going behind these masks. The only one you really know is yourself. And I think to be a significant writer, you have to be willing to kind of expose yourself and dig deep, and as Harlan Ellison would say, bleed on the paper or something like that. And that's a lesson I learned early on that stood me in good stead. I write about a lot of characters, and none of them are kids from Bayonne. So obviously I'm not writing about what I know in that sense. I've never been an exiled princess. I've never been an 8-year-old girl. I've never been a dwarf. But there's a lot of me in all those characters. I mean, I think what would it be like if I was an 8-year-old girl in Arya's situation? What would it be like if I was Daenerys Targaryen or Tyrion Lannister? How would it feel? And I do put a lot of myself into that.
Yes.
Before I ask my question, Mr. Martin, I'd really like to thank you for writing the books. They've had a huge impact on my life, so thank you. My question is, how do you think that the success of the entire A Song of Ice and Fire universe has influenced the way that you're writing the future books?
Okay.
Hi, I have 2 questions. The first one's really quick. First, what are your favorite house words? And then also, I assume you quickly developed a final outcome for the story after originally creating it, but at some points you also made changes like the inclusion of like a 5-year gap. So I was wondering if there were any other major deviations or character choices that you made and later thought better of.
My favorite house words are definitely "Winter is Coming." That's the one I write, repeatedly when I used to do inscriptions on signed books. I haven't actually gotten to the end yet, so I don't know if there are going to be other major changes. It's possible, but I think the broad outlines are going to remain the same. I know where some of the major characters are going, how they're going to end up, how it's going to resolve. But the devil is in the details, and there's a lot of stuff that occurs when you're actually writing the books. I don't know, you dealt with some of this, you and Harriet with Jordan, I'm sure. Jim always said that he knew the last scene. Yep. When he started. So did he entrust that to Harriet, and did Brandon write the last scene that Jim had originally envisioned?
He did, yeah.
And that was like 20 years later, right?
20 years later. But of course, then he was thinking it was going to be a trilogy.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I'm already forgetting the first question. Yeah. I keep forgetting there's 2 questions at a time. I'm old and feeble, so.
How do you think the success of the entire universe has influenced the way that you write the future novels?
I don't think it's influenced the way I write the future novels, but it's certainly been a distraction. I probably would have written the novels faster if I wasn't like always approving things or going on tours or doing
Coming to Brown,
to do that. I mean, there's just a lot of other things, and some of it is good stuff. It's stuff I enjoy doing. I know there's a subset of my fans that would like to just chain me to the typewriter. And if no one was giving me awards or offering me free trips to Dubai and South Africa, maybe I would do that. But when I actually settle down and write, between these trips here, and I mean, I swear I'm trying to cut down on all of this. But when I'm actually there writing, it's like time vanishes, and I'm back once again in Westeros, and the real world disappears, and days and weeks go by, and I don't do anything else except live and breathe those characters, and that's still pretty much the same process. Everything vanishes, including the show. As much as I love the show, it's different from the books, and so it's the books and the characters as I interpreted them that take over my life.